All right, we're going to get back into it. We're going to get on to the RFK, Robert Kennedy assassination. This is video number 4, and we're going to go back into this Wikipedia article. After that, we're going to be doing just almost exclusively reading from documents. But I just want to get an idea and an understanding of what happened. And so you read the Wikipedia articles, and that gives you that. All right, so let's take a look at that, and we'll continue. We're going to start off where the assassination begins, I believe. So if I can get this to come up here, hold on one second. Wow, it's very slow. Yeah, there we go. All right, the assassination. The California presidential primary elections were held on June 4th, 1968. Polls by CBS showed Kennedy leading by 7%. The statewide results gave Kennedy 46% to McCarthy's 42%. Kennedy also won the South Dakota primary, winning approximately 50% of the vote. Arthur Joseph Palermo referred to the victory as Kennedy's greatest. He was now in a second place with 393 and a half total delegates. I don't know how you get a half. Against Humphrey's 561 delegates. Wow. So he's still behind. Anyway, at approximately 12:02 a.m. the next day, so this would be the 5th of January, 5th of June, Kennedy addressed his campaign supporters in the Embassy Ballroom, the Ambassador Hotel in the Mid-Wilson district of Los Angeles. At the time, the government did not provide Secret Service protection for presidential candidates. Kennedy's only security personnel were former FBI agent William Barry and 2 unofficial bodyguards, Olympic decathlon gold medalist Rafer Johnson and former football player Rosie Greer. At approximately 12:10 a.m., concluding his speech, Kennedy said, "So my thanks to all of you, and on to Chicago, and let's win there." Kennedy planned to walk through the ballroom after speaking on his way to another gathering of supporters, but reporters wanted a press conference. The campaign aide, Fred Dutton, decided that Kennedy would forego the second gathering and instead go through the hotel's kitchen pantry area behind the ballroom to the press area. Let's find out about Frederick Dutton. Kennedy had welcome contact with the public during the campaign, and the people had often tried to touch him in excitement. Soon after Kennedy concluded the speech, he started to exit through the ballroom, where Barry stopped him and said, "No, it's been changed. We're going this way." So this is pretty critical. That person right there, I would say, is pretty damn critical. I would definitely say there. So hold on a second. So we got 5, we got 3, so 740. Because if Kennedy had done what he wanted to do, he wouldn't have been in the kitchen pantry, and the forces that arranged for Sirhan to be in the kitchen pantry plus other assassins at the same time wouldn't have happened. So I'm not saying Fred Dutton is a suspect, but something could have happened. They could have manipulated Fred Dutton, um, gave him false information about a press conference, and then that would have caused him to go through the pantry there. All right. Let's see. Barry and Dutton began clearing a way for Kennedy to go left through swinging doors to the kitchen corridor, but he was hemmed in by the crowd and followed maitre d' hotel Carl Euchre through the back exit. Um, Euchre led Kennedy through the kitchen area, holding his right wrist, but frequently releasing it as Kennedy shook hands with people whom he encountered. Euchre and Kennedy started down a passageway um, narrowed by an ice machine and a steam table to the north. So, when you're hunting, it's always easier to kill a prey in a kill zone, a controlled, narrowed kill zone. That way, no matter which way they go, they're in that box and you got them. Just like Kennedy in Dealey Plaza was in that box. There wasn't very many places to go. It was wide open there for shooters to see him. In this one, they're putting RFK in a controlled box. So if there's shooters in there, they can get him. There's no way around it. Um, Although, if you think about assassinations, um, if I was going to assassinate someone, I'd much rather do it from a longer distance than right up to them. Because if you're right up there, you're probably going to get caught. And just like Oswald in the basement, a confined space, it's definitely you're definitely going to kill them, but you're probably going to get caught. So who knows if the killers had already created this scenario where they put him in this confined kill zone in the kitchen there, kitchen pantry, and then use Sirhan to start firing with his 8-shot revolver as a distraction, and therefore they can shoot Kennedy in the back of the head. And think about it also. If you're going to kill somebody, assassinate them, would you really take the risk of using a 22? A 22, if you put a couple of 22 slugs right in someone's head, you could kill them. But if you're moved around, tackled, all these kinds of things, anything can go wrong in a confined space with a lot of people. A 22 is not the gun you're going to use. A 22 would be a good distraction weapon. Police don't use 22s, they use 38s because 38s is going to take someone down. Okay? It's going to make a lot of noise, and it's going to, once it hits them, you can hit them with 138, and that'll kill them. Okay? A 22 could just, like it did, it went through Kennedy's, I think it went through his coat, it went through his side, and it wounded him. It was the coup de grace behind the ear, 2 inches behind the ear, that killed him. And of course, Sirhan didn't get anywhere close to 2 inches behind Kennedy's right ear because Sirhan was 2 to 3 feet in front of him. So let me see here. We're going to put Carl Euchre. So we got Fred, and then we got Carl Euchre. I want to find out more about these people. Now, I'm not saying Carl Euchre is involved or this Fred Dutton, but obviously Carl Euchre was guiding him. Okay. Did you know that Carl Euchre was threatened? If people would call him and say, if you keep talking, we're gonna do bad things to your family. And his son, I believe, was either gunned down or run down in the middle of the street after that. So that's very interesting. Let's see. Euchre and Kennedy started down and passed away. So Kennedy turned to his left and shook the hands of Juan Romero, just as Sirhan stepped down from a low tray stacker besides the ice machine, rushing past Euchre and repeatedly firing his 8-shot 22 long rifle caliber Ivor Johnson Cadet 55 revolver A 22 caliber long rifle. Interesting. Kennedy fell to the floor. Others, including writer Joe Plimpton and Greer, tried to disarm Sirhan as he continued firing his gun in random directions. 5 other people were wounded. Let's see, we'll get George Plimpton as a witness. And then we've got, Rosie Greer, right? And Rosie Greer. Tried to disarm Sirhan as he continued to continued firing his gun in random directions. 5 other people were wounded. William Wiesel of ABC News. We want to get his statement. Paul Schrade of the United Automobile Workers Union. Oh, just a little bit of information. I've been listening to a lot of videos on the RFK assassination. Did you know that Sirhan's gun, this Ivor Johnson cadet revolver, was never tested and entered into evidence? And the bullets compared to the bullets found in Kennedy and the other people? Ever? What they did is the district attorney's office went out and bought another Ivor Johnson Cadet 55A revolver that was similar, but a different serial number. They put bullets in it and fired them. They didn't use the gun that was used to supposedly kill Kennedy, the one they convicted Sirhan with. And they entered that into evidence as the test bullets. The jury didn't know this until after, when it came out in the news that the bullets entered in the gun entered into evidence was not the gun, or the test firing was not the one used by Sirhan. Isn't that strange? Don't you think that if you're going to use, or you're going to try to convict someone for using a gun, that you would do tests on the gun they fired to kill the person you said they killed? But they didn't do that. And when asked why they didn't do that, they said they preferred to leave the gun in the possession of the county clerk and not remove it. All right, and there's Stroll. The reason I'm putting these names, we're going to come back and get witness statements from them about what they saw and what they heard. Okay? A minute later, Sirhan wrestled free and grabbed the revolver again, but others grabbed him. Barry went to Kennedy and placed his jacket under Kennedy's head. As Kennedy lay wounded, Romero cradled his head and placed a rosary in his hand. Kennedy asked Romero, "Is everybody okay?" Romero responded, "Yes, everybody's okay." And Kennedy then turned away and said, "Everything's going to be okay." The moment was captured by Boris Yarrow of the Los Angeles Times. So he's a witness also. Did you know that Sirhan had been out on the firing range practicing that day, and that he had been drinking also, and that when he drove by, he had no intention of going by the campaign celebration going on there. But when he drove down Wilshire, he saw all the commotion and decided to stop and, I guess, get another drink. So he went in and got another drink. And when he was in the bar, he met this woman in a blonde in a polka dotted dress, the famous polka dotted dress woman. And he started talking to her and thinking, hey, maybe I'm going to get lucky. Um, he went with her to try to find some coffee to sober up. And all he remembers after meeting the girl with the polka dotted dress was the shiny silver coffee urn. And the next thing he remembers was being choked by Rosie Greer and other people trying to take the gun out of his hand. And he didn't even know he had the gun, because he had the gun in the car after coming back from target practice. He had left the gun in the car. So he doesn't remember how he got the gun inside. He doesn't remember taking the gun into the Wilshire Hotel there. All right. So it says, let's see, we'll keep going. Immediate aftermath and death. As the shooting took place, ABC News was signing off from its election night broadcast. While the CBS coverage had been concluded, CBS went back on the air with the coverage of the shooting 21 minutes after it had taken place. ABC's associate news director, Wiesel, who had been wounded during the shooting, reported from his stretcher. ABC was able to show the scant live footage from the kitchen after Kennedy had been transported, but all ABC coverage from the hotel was in black and white. Approximately 3 hours later, after the incident, television networks began their morning broadcast schedules. About 6 million Western American households viewed the live reporting. So there was I think it was a Polish news crew there, and they had sound recording equipment. And when you play back from when Kennedy leaves to when the shootings happen, you don't hear 8 shots. You hear like something like 15 shots, or like at least 10 or 12, much more than the 8 shots. Okay. So that was very interesting when you hear that. And let's see here. It says Kennedy's wife, Ethel, was 3 months pregnant. There's Ethel Kennedy. She's a witness because she was, I guess, walking there right behind him. Ethel Kennedy. Was 3 months pregnant, had been away from the shooting scene. She was soon led to Kennedy and knelt beside him. Kennedy turned his head, seeming to recognize her. Now, isn't that interesting? She was pregnant, if I remember correctly, with RFK Jr., the one who is destroying the CDC and the HHS, Health and Human Services right now. Um, the one that was the drug addict and the philanderer on his wife. He had like God knows how many girlfriends, and he was a heroin addict, and he said that he had like ADD, and that heroin helped him moderate out his thoughts, and he could finally write and do creative things. I read that just recently. That the ADD acted like a worm in his brain or something like that. Very strange person. Anyway, after several minutes, medical attendants arrived um, and lifted Kennedy onto the stretcher, prompting him to whisper, "Don't lift me." which were his last words. He lost consciousness shortly afterward. He was taken to Central Receiving Hospital. A doctor slapped his face, calling him Bob, 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 while another doctor massaged his heart. After obtaining a good heartbeat, doctors handed a stethoscope to Ethel so that she could hear Kennedy's heart beating. Wow. After about 30 minutes, Kennedy was transferred several blocks to Good Samaritan Hospital to undergo surgery. A gymnasium near the hospital was set up as a temporary headquarters for the press and news media to receive updates on his condition. Surgery began at 3:12 a.m., lasted 3 hours and 40 minutes. At 5:30 p.m. on Wednesday, spokesman Frank Mankiewicz announced Kennedy's doctors were concerned over his continued failure to show improvement. Well, you shoot someone in the back of the head, that's usually not a good thing. This is why people get shot in the back of the head, okay? Because in the back of the head, the lower extremity back part, that controls all your vital functions, your heart, your lungs, all those things. The memory is in the front part of the frontal lobes, okay? So if you lose that, you can still live. You may not be able to remember anything, but remember they used to do lobotomies and they take out the frontal lobes. So whoever shot him, okay, knew exactly what to do. It was a controlled kill. You have the distraction, everyone's ducking and diving. What's the first thing you do when a gun goes off right beside you? You duck and you dive. Okay? And then the killer came up from behind him and shot him right in the back of the head. Now there was a security guard. I can't remember his name, but he said that he pulled his gun, but he said he had a 38. But he also said that he had a 22 Ivor Johnson, just like Sirhan's, okay, at home. And he said that no, he sold it like 3 months before the assassination, but they talked to the person and they showed the receipt. That person shows the receipt that he bought it from him, and it showed that it was sold in September of 1968, 3 months after the assassination. But he was never brought in as a witness. He was never brought into the court. Nothing like that. I mean, not even the defense didn't even bring him in. Anyway, Kennedy had been shot multiple times. The fatal shot was fired at a range of 1 inch, entering behind his right ear. Now, Kennedy's walking into the pantry this way, facing this way. The kitchen pantry table's over here. Sirhan's over by the kitchen pantry table 3 to 4 feet away over here and firing in this direction. Whoever shot Kennedy, fired at him from behind to the right. This is exactly where the security guard said he was. Mankiewicz was here holding Kennedy's right hand, and behind Carl Euchre, was the security guard. The other 2 shots entered the rear of his right armpit. One exited through his chest, and the other lodged in the back of his neck. So, again, how do you get, if you're facing this way and the shooter's over here and he fires this way, how do you get bullets fired at you from this way? It's impossible. Despite extensive neurosurgery to remove the bullet and bone fragments from his brain, he was pronounced dead at 1:44 a.m. on June 6, nearly 25 hours after the shooting. It's exactly like Abraham Lincoln. Remember Abraham Lincoln? Boom, shot in the back of the head with a small caliber Derringer. Mankiewicz left the hospital and walked to the gymnasium where the press and the news media were set up continuous updates of the situation. At 2 a.m. on June 6, Mankiewicz announced Kennedy's death. The following week, NBC devoted 55 hours to the shooting and its aftermath. All three networks initially preempting their regular coverage and advertisements to cover the story. All right, and we got the funeral. No disrespect, but we're going to skip the funeral part, okay? All right. So you see here, but I will say this. Humphrey got the nomination, and Richard Nixon barely won. I think it was something like one of the most closest races ever by a margin of only 0.7%. Okay, now there's Sirhan. Sirhan was born on March 19, 1944 in Jerusalem, Palestine, to an Arab Christian family. At the age of 4, he and his family narrowly escaped a bomb explosion during the 1948 Palestine War, also known as in Israel as the War of Independence. This incident occurring, according to Arthur Meyer Aiton, had a psychological effect on young Sirhan. He witnessed various other violent incidents during his childhood, including physical abuse by his father and death of his older brothers at the hands of a military truck that was trying to avoid a sniper. In late 1956, Sirhan, along with his family, immigrated to the United States. He was unhappy with immigrating to the United States, later saying the U.S. was against the Arabs and was friendly with Israel, and a friend of my enemy is my enemy. Once in the United States, Sirhan received above average grades and joined an officer candidate school. During his late teenage years, Sirhan's father abandoned the family. His sister died and his two brothers were arrested. He was expelled from Pasadena City College. Sirhan held strongly anti-Zionist and pro-Palestinian beliefs. In 1966, while pursuing a career as a jockey, Sirhan fell from a running horse, suffering minor injuries. A friend of Sirhan said that after his incident, Sirhan was impatient, nervous, emotional, and always in a hurry. A diary was found during a search of his home where he wrote on May 18th, Robert Kennedy must be assassinated. So just to let you know about that, okay, so that's 2 years, okay? He worked at Del Mar Horse Track, okay? And Del Mar was owned by, I think, the mafia and some oil tycoons from Dallas, okay? So Sirhan diary. Yeah. And what happened with Sirhan is he recalls ending up in this hospital, but it was a very strange hospital. Um, they never treated him for his head injury; they just wrapped it up. But every day they would come around and pass out all this medication, and then he would blank out and not remember what was going on for a day or two at a time. He got so worried. He was gone for quite a while. His mom sent his brothers out looking for him. Okay. Eventually, after like a month, he shows back up. And ever since then, he was never the same. All right. A diary was found during a search of his home where he wrote on May 18th, Robert Kennedy must be assassinated. My determination to eliminate RFK is becoming more and more of an unshakable obsession. RFK must die. RFK must die. Now, they say that RFK, that's when um, Sirhan had planned to kill RFK at the ambassador. But the news article saying that Kennedy was going to be at the ambassador for the primary didn't show up for about 2 weeks later. Okay. Investigation and trial. Due to Sirhan being a non citizen, it was illegal under California law for him to purchase firearms. He violated 3 California laws by possessing the pistol he used to kill Kennedy. Lauren Coleman suggested that the date of the assassination is significant because it was the first anniversary of the start of the Six-Day War with Israel and its Arab neighbors, which Sirhan wasn't in Israel at that time, the year before. When Sirhan was booked by police, they found in his pocket a newspaper article that discussed Kennedy's support for Israel. Sirhan later said that he began to hate Kennedy after learning of this support. You know, Kennedy also supported other people too and other groups. He supported the Berliners. He supported South Africa. Excuse me, the blacks in South Africa against apartheid. There were many groups that he supported. Sirhan later said that Sirhan was convicted of Kennedy's murder on April 1969. It was sentenced to death. Now, at first, he pled guilty, okay? But the judge refused to take his guilty plea and assigned him the lawyer. The lawyer tried to get the case thrown out, saying that Sirhan was mentally ill or something like that. They did a mental test on him and found out that he was not mentally ill, but highly hypnotizable. Okay. All right. It says here, and was sentenced to death. In 1972, the sentence was commuted to life in prison with the possibility of parole after the California Supreme Court, in its ruling California versus Anderson, invalidated as unconstitutional all pending death sentences that were imposed before 1972, and that included the Manson family. In 1975, it was decided that Sirhan would be freed on parole in 1984. In 1982, however, the California Board of Prison Terms rescinded the parole date, citing death threats made by Sirhan from prison. In 1989, Sirhan told David Frost in prison that his sole connection with Kennedy was Kennedy's support for Israel and his deliberate attempt to send those 50 bombers to Israel to obviously do harm to Palestinians. Although a study published in the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists referred to Sirhan as a withdrawn fanatic with multiple identity problems, the author James W. Clark stated that Sirhan was more motivated by the political issues than by his personal temperament. During the trial, Sirhan's lawyers attempted to use the defense of diminished responsibility, while Sirhan tried to confess to the crime and change his plea to guilty on several times. He testified that he had killed Kennedy with 20 years of malice forethought, excuse me. As of 2023, Sirhan has been denied parole 17 times. Hold on one second. All right. His lawyers have claimed that he was framed and his claims to have no memory of his crime. In February 2012, Sirhan's lawyers, William Pepper was the same guy who won the case um, against another person for killing Martin Luther King. And Lori Duntz filed a court brief in district court in Los Angeles claiming that a second gunman fired the shots that killed Kennedy. It was the fourth in the series of federal briefs filed under habeas corpus by Pepper and Dusick, beginning in October 2010. In 2015, Judge Beverly Reed O'Connell denied this petition. During Sirhan's 2016 parole hearing, Paul Schrade, who was shot and wounded on the assassination right, asserted that the fatal shot to Kennedy was by a different shooter. He claimed that the Los Angeles Police Department destroyed the evidence, hid ballistic evidence exonerating Sirhan, and covered up conclusive evidence that a second gunman fatally wounded Robert Kennedy. And if you look in the photos, the Los Angeles Police Department photos, you see that they've circled as bullet holes in the panels behind where Kennedy. So, like, here's Kennedy, here's Sirhan, and there were a couple of people, I think 3 or 4 people shot here, and there were panels here. So if you've got 3 bullets going in Kennedy, and I think there's 3 or 4 going into individuals behind Kennedy, okay, so that's 7 bullets, and then behind them were something like, you know, I think three more bullets, or 4 more bullets, bullet holes, okay. So what that tells you is that Sirhan was firing his Iver Johnson 8-shot, hit 4 people, okay, and 4 other bullets went in the panels behind them. After they dropped, he kept firing, and 4 more bullets went in the panels. And then whoever was standing behind and to the right of RFK shot him 3 times with a very similar Iver Johnson 22 revolver. Thus, the security guard. When they were asked to retrieve the panels to show those extra bullet holes, the police department said that they had destroyed the panels because of lack of space. All right. Yeah, see, destroyed evidence. Now, this Wikipedia article, like all Wikipedia articles, is very watered down. There's a lot more details in the generalizations that they talk about, and we're going to get into those, okay? In August 2021, the California State Parole Panel recommended Sirhan's parole. After almost 50 years, over 50 years. 2 Kennedy children, Robert Jr., the one who's in the Trump government now, and Douglas, supported the decision. Oh, Thane Eugene Caesar, okay? Thane Eugene Caesar was living in the Philippines and was approached by Robert Kennedy Jr., okay? And asked to tell everything he knew about his father's assassination. And I believe Thane Eugene Caesar sent back a note saying he would for something like $100,000 or something like that. And when Kennedy got that information, he sent back a message saying that he would give him $100,000 to tell his story. But when the message came back, Thane Eugene Caesar had died in the Philippines. While 6 others opposed it, Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, denied the parole in January 2022, asserting that Sirhan has not developed the accountability and insight required to support his safe release into the community. Well, I don't know. Sirhan's what? He's born in 44, and he's now what, 2025. He's 81 years old, folks. I think we don't have too much to fear from an 81-year-old man. But interestingly, Trump, who I totally disagree with, has released all of the JFK and RFK and I guess the rest of the JFK assassination files that we know of. Okay. He did that on request of Robert uh, Kennedy Jr. All right. Let's see how much time I got. 20 minutes. Okay. Conspiracy theories. CIA involvement hypothesis. In November 2006, BBC's Newsnight program presented research by filmmaker Shane O'Sullivan alleging that several Central Intelligence Agency officers were present on the night of the assassination. The three men who appear in the films and the photos from the night of the assassination were identified by former colleagues and associates as former senior CIA officers who had worked together in 1963 at JM Wave, the CIA anti-Castro station in Miami. They were JM Wave Chief Operations David Morales. Okay. And then we've got Chief of Maritime Operations Gordon Campbell. And Chief of Psychological Warfare Operations George Joannides. Several people who had known Morales were sure that he was not the man claimed by O'Sullivan. After O'Sullivan published his book, Assassination, researchers Jefferson Morley and David Talbert discovered that Campbell had died of a heart attack in 1962, 6 years before Kennedy's assassination. In response, O'Sullivan stated that the man in the video may have used Campbell's name as an alias. Okay. So there's David Morales. Let's see if there's a picture of him. I'm not too familiar with him. All right. So before Kennedy ran for office, and right around this same time, in New Orleans, Garrison was conducting the trial against um, Clay Shaw, the businessman who he said was involved with Oswald and Ferry um, in the assassination. Okay, and watched a video of Mark Lane, who said that he was given a message because Mark Lane was working as a volunteer on Garrison's investigation. And Mark Lane had been a lawyer, news reporter, and wrote, did some work on the Kennedy assassination. And Mark Lane and Robert knew each other. And so Robert Kennedy got a hold of Mark Lane and told him to tell Garrison that he fully 100% supported his theory on the assassination and what he was doing, and that he would like to come out publicly and say something, but he needed to win the nomination, and it would be difficult for him to win the nomination if he came out and said something about that. So he was going to wait until after he got the nomination, after he got elected, and then he was going to blow open the whole JFK assassination and go after the people responsible. Okay. So that right there, my friends, is a damn good reason to kill somebody. Okay. Because if you're the murderers of the president and then his brother is running for president and says when he becomes president, he's going to go after and blow open the whole assassination and prosecute those responsible, that's a damn good reason to kill that person. Okay. So the CIA definitely, you know, like I say about the JFK assassination, the RFK and the MLK, it wasn't the entire CIA, it wasn't the entire military, it wasn't the entire FBI that was involved in the assassinations. Okay, it were rogue, extreme right wing elements of those organizations that piggybacked on those organizations and used them to further the assassination. Okay. JFK because he wouldn't go after Castro. Okay. And he wouldn't go into Vietnam. They killed MLK because MLK, they were afraid that if he spoke out openly against the Vietnam War, which he was already starting to do, and told all African Americans to protest until we got civil rights, we're not going to go fight your damn white man's war in Vietnam. And 30% of the fighting force in Vietnam was African American. They knew they had a problem, so they had to get rid of him. And then you've got RFK saying he was going to go after the people who killed JFK and probably MLK too. That's a pretty damn good reason to kill him. So you devise. So it's like this, okay? It's always like this. If someone is killed, okay, a politician, a political figure, the first thing you have to think is, who does that benefit when that person is dead? Okay? That's the first thing you have to think. The logical person that's going to kill someone is someone that would benefit or would be protected by their death. So, who would be benefited by the death of JFK or the death of MLK or the death of RFK? That's your target right there. So, if you're that target, if you're that person that's going to do the assassination, you've already covered that. You already know that the first people they're going to look at are us. Okay? So we can't send a CIA trained agent out to kill JFK, RFK, MLK. It's too damn fucking obvious. So what you have to have is deniability. It's just like in Israel, we assassinate someone, but they never come out and say, yeah, it was us. Okay? Deniability. And the best way to have deniability is to have some lone crazed nut do your business for you. Because it doesn't matter if it's a lone crazed nut or if it's a KKK racist or some right wing Nazi and they kill the person you want dead. If the person's dead, the results after that are the same, right? So you might as well put someone in there that all the traffic's going to stop at them. It was lone crazed Oswald. They couldn't let Oswald go to trial because then everything would come out, right? And then you've got this loser, that supposedly shot and killed MLK, who's, not too smart. If you listen to him speak, he's not the not the brightest guy. And you have other people. What was that guy's name? He had some secret guy from New Orleans, actually, that was handling him. is his handling. You always have layers and layers and layers of protection. You know, the government, the CIA is no different than the mafia. Okay, if they want someone killed, they don't want it coming back to them, so they get someone way down the line that didn't hear the order come straight from the Don's mouth. Okay, so if you've got people, right wing elements in the government, and you think about it, when you think about people in the military and people in the FBI and people in the CIA, you know, I'm not, I don't know if there's any studies being done, but I don't think about ultra liberal um, people. Okay, most people, cops, military people, FBI people. I've never met anybody in the CIA, but I assume it's the same. It seemed to me they're pretty conservative. Okay, so you've already got a fertile base there. I'd say probably in all those organizations, probably 70%, 75% vote Republican, 25% vote Democrat. Okay, 75% conservative, 25%, if that at all, you know, progressive, liberal, Democrat, like that. So you've already got a fertile base. Okay, so that's where it's going to come from. Now, one thing that's interesting here, I don't know a lot about David Morales, but I'm going to find out more. George Ioannidis, okay, when they did the House assassination panel in the 1970s, okay, because I've listened to the tapes, the videos of the people testifying, they had these, you know, the congressmen didn't go over to the CIA and look at documents, okay? They hired people to do that, staffers, they hired lawyers to do that. They hired these two brand new lawyers, I think from Yale or Harvard or whatever, and they were going to look at CIA documents, okay? And so the CIA said, well, we can't have these documents leaving the building. So we're going to make you a room, a secure room, okay? And then we're going to put the documents, we're going to put you in the room, okay? We're going to check you coming in, coming out. That way you can't take documents, can't make copies. But you can take notes. So they set them up like a little skiff, a mini skiff for them, okay? And they went in and read documents, but they had to go over there every day. And then, you know, they'd ask for, they had to tell them what they wanted. They weren't allowed to go and look through the drawers. Okay, I want, if you have documents on this or documents on that. And, you know, it's like if you're asking a thief, well, we want to find some evidence, some stolen items on you. So can you go get the stolen jewelry and the stolen guns or whatever that you stole and bring it to us so we can use against you, right? That's what they're doing. The CIA can, oh, no, there's no documents on that. Sorry, we looked. Sorry. You know? And then they caught on to that. They caught on to what they were doing. And then something happened where they were able to find specific documents by these numbers that the CIA was using. So then they closed down this skiff, moved them to another secure room over by the congressional offices, and then they had this runner, this one guy, you know, he would come in every morning with the documents that they needed. They would read the documents. There was a guard there. They couldn't leave. They couldn't make copies, all that stuff. And then he would go back. So they pushed them away from the CIA building, okay? And then this guy would come every, you know, they'd say, okay, here's a list of more documents to bring tomorrow or next week or whatever. And then he would bring those documents. And guess who that guy's name was? George Ioannidis, okay? He was the psychological and deception warfare operations officer for the CIA, okay? And he was running an op against the House Select Committee lawyers. for the CIA. They were running their own op against the House Select Committee and using George Ioannidis, and they never told them that George Ioannidis, what he did. They just thought he was a staffer or clerk. But then they found out later exactly what he did. Okay? So there's good old George Ioannidis. And Jefferson Morley is very interesting because he's basically coming right out from the latest documents released from the Trump administration. He's read through all these documents, and he says he's come to the conclusion that the CIA, the assassination was being run in the CIA by the former director, Ioannidis, and the counterintelligence guy. God, what was his name? I can't remember the guy's counterintelligence name. But anyway, that according to those documents, that they were running Oswald. Okay, they sent him to Russia. They brought him back, and then they used him again, and they used him as the patsy. And somebody else killed Kennedy, but it was all ran out of that office in the CIA between George Ioannidis and God, I can't remember his name. We'll get to him eventually. But that was pretty strong for most of the JFK, RFK assassination committee or community. And so they said Jefferson Morley is way out of line here, that the documents don't prove that. I'm still going through all those documents. As you can see here, I'm going through every Mary Farrell document by document, okay, on MOK, RFK, and these are all my JFK documents. So what I'm doing is on the JFK, it has to either be about Oswald or it has to be about the assassination or run up to the assassination. I know all this Cuban stuff and Operation Mongoose stuff is important, but I frankly don't have time for all of that. What Jefferson Morley is saying is that Operation Mongoose, okay, which was this plan to use the mafia and anti-Castro Cubans to kill Castro, was basically turned around by these ultra conservatives in the DIA, the defense establishment, the FBI and the CIA and the mafia. They just turned it around and pointed the gun, instead of pointing the guns at Kennedy, pointed the guns at Castro, pointing them at Kennedy. And this is not new. This is, you know, Oliver Stone was picking up on this back in when he did his movie in '91, JFK. This is not new, but now we have documents to prove that, okay, according to Jefferson Morley. But I'm going to continue going through all these documents, you know, document by document, pulling every document that's related to that MOK, RFK, JFK, because I personally don't think you can separate them all. I think they're all connected. It's the same group that killed JFK, killed RFK, and killed MOK. And they've probably done a hell of a lot of other things too. Okay, because you see these same guys, even I think David Morales shows up in Watergate, right? And a lot of the people who are the anti-Castro mongoose trained people at JM Wave against Castro, they show up in Watergate also, right? Okay, that's all I got. I only got an hour, so we'll just keep plugging along and keep going. All right, take care. Bye.